Back in 2021, there was a manga so earth-shattering in its examination of isekai genre tropes that it had to be silenced by the entire industry. This parody manga called Killing the People Reincarnated into the Other World, Cheat Slayer, shined light and cut through isekai tropes with such precision that the authors of prominent isekai series called for its cancellation. Now what made it so offensive that it had to be cancelled? There were many apologies made by the production company and multiple articles written about the nature of parody Cheat Slayer depicted. How did Cheat Slayer parody isekai tropes, you ask? By not actually doing anything special that couldn't separate it from any other isekai and being generally terrible. I'm not kidding when I say that it didn't do anything special. The most creative writing was naming the Subaru insert as Honda. To be honest, that should have given it another chapter. Cracks me up every time. What was the rest of writing like then? I'm certain that the author had a singular thought in his mind, which was, what if reincarnated heroes are actually terrible people? And ran with it. How did the author portray this morally dubious cast of reincarnated heroes? Well, it only actually managed to negatively portray one, but let's ignore that. By having the said hero kill the main character's village and having his way with the main character's childhood friend. So it's like any other dark fantasy written by a 14-year-old. It's like the author couldn't figure out how to portray a morally evil character and went with the old tired trope of fridging female character for male character's motivation. The author probably thought he was being clever, but it's played exactly like any other terrible revenge fantasy story, without any closer examination of said trope. When Rosengarten's saga manages to somewhat subvert that trope by actually making it absurd, then you should know that it can work. Rosengarten's saga is also posted to the wall insane, and it's an ironic great time. Go read it. What else? Some of the characters chosen to be parodied are also rather questionable. You got the big hitters like Kirito, Ainz and Subaru, but Rimuru, Aku and Aletta, what did they do to deserve this? Aqua especially feels out of place. You couldn't find another female protagonist to parody and had to resort to a supporting character. Like going for an even split in this case is a mistake in my opinion. You could have made them all men and then commented on why these male power fantasy inserts could teach bad morals to their readers, or why the most popular ones tend to be men. But I'm not that certain that the author thought that far ahead. Once again, good writing eludes isekai. So the manga is not good, and it never had any chance to be any good, since Cheat Slayer ended after one chapter. Usually when a publisher accesses a manga, they let it run for at least 2 double digits to see if there is any demand for it. What is actually more interesting in this whole affair is that could you do a full-blown isekai parody with recognizable characters, especially a parody which depicts them in a very negative light? I think the answer for that is a no, and let me explain why. To draw a bit of a comparison, comic industry in the West is filled with the parodies of popular superheroes, especially Superman. It's become such a menace that writing an evil Superman is just lazy writing and a trope in itself. Then again, there are series like The Boys, which depicts familiar superheroes as completely wild beings, and the show turns it way down from the comics. The shit that Garth Ennis depicted in that comic is way more wild than what Cheat Slayer ever did. I'm not calling the comic good either. The Boys TV show absolutely trashes its source material and cuts out a lot of edginess from the comic, for the better. Fun fact, The Boys comic was actually dropped by its publisher DC Comics for being too dark, but they let Garth Ennis and his co-author Derek Robertson keep the rights and continue working with another publisher. No one called for its cancellation for being too on the nose. This didn't happen with the Cheat Slayer, and I think if we take a closer look at that time I got reincarnated as a Slime's author's comment about the series. Quote, I have received an apology from the Dragon Age editorial department. For an author, the character's image is important, so I request that if you do parody, you do not overdo it. End quote. Do not overdo parody? I think this might explain some. In West, having an obvious Superman self-insert is completely fair game, and I think I have to make it clear that parody doesn't have to be good for it to be fair use, in the West at least. Where is this imaginary line where parody is okay in the Japanese manga industry? Some of these characters are evil in their respective series, and turning that up to 11 as a parody should be fair game. I think that should be fine since, well, original work is still intact. If a parody manages to make you think how twisted some of these characters and tropes are, well, maybe then the parody has a point. Going back to Superman. You can have all these parodies and edgy depictions of Superman, but the original character still holds up, and there are as many examinations why the character of Superman is morally good and why that is the best version of Superman. Could your average isekai protagonist still shine bright against such scrutiny? Reaction to Cheat Slayer is rather peculiar. It was terrible sure and didn't show any signs to be any better. But could this mean that in the future there could be a scenario where a manga publisher will not let an author do a well-written parody of depicting isekai protagonists as evil people because of this outrage? I certainly hope not. There are a lot of tropes you could examine with closer detail. Even Cheat Slayer managed to touch upon the fact that these heroes were losers in their previous life, and of course they would abuse their newfound power. There is something to parody or satirize. Maybe with these Japanese fair use laws, it just means that this parody won't come out from Japan, and that will be a sad turn of events. I think I'll leave you with that. Like the video and all that jazz. If you check the description, you can see that there are some news articles about this event and a high-effort Reddit post about the whole affair. Check those out if you want to know more about the series. Also subscribe for more garbage.